Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Love Tribe. Yes, Love Tribe, brought to you by Carla Barandis, or as some of my friends call me, Carly B. or as my mom always called me, Carla B. Um, Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for clicking. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm definitely in the growth process. I am trying to transition from life coaching into applying my strategies in this podcast in a way that, as you can see, doesn't involve you having to pay. Um, it's accessible, it's there for you, um, because I think that these are skills that we need to have in our life in order to have better mental health, better spiritual health, will in turn result in better physical health, because all of these components, they are interconnected um, in our life. And in order for you to see your life through the eyes of a lens of joy and peace and happiness as a choice, more often than not, these skills are important. These are skills that I've harnessed over time. I've helped people, a lot of people, achieve them, and now I want to give them to you, and I want to share them with you, either on these one-on-ones or in the interviews that I do. So I appreciate it. I also appreciate people who have been donating to the Love Tribe movement. Thank you so much. I'm going to put some information on some people and establishments that have been contributing for me to have the equipment I have in order to actually be recording. So I'm really appreciative of it, and definitely humbled. There are days where I think of maybe just kind of quitting, like not doing this. I don't have a huge following on this platform yet, but I've also gotten a lot of feedback from the few people that I do have here, how much you've enjoyed, receiving messages from me, or laughing at my interviews, or things that are shared with people that I've had already on the show. And we're going to keep going. And who knows? Message me. I may invite you for an interview. I definitely believe in highlighting people's story as a testimony of what they've lived. It may help other people, because all of these features that we try to grow in our life, or that we need in our life for a better life, we gain from each other. We learn from one another. It's just a matter of you making yourself available to let the opportunity happen where you can learn from someone. So anyway, so today I want to talk about, as you're sharing, subscribing, and liking, and post a cute comment, you can also connect with me on Instagram, Love Tribe 143. That's my Instagram page, and you'll find a lot more information there. If you want to book a session, you can also book a coaching session with me, a one-on-one. I definitely love those. That's also on my Instagram page, Love Tribe 143. So get there if you want to check that out, or check the show more section when the video's over. So today I want to talk about resilience, and I was thinking of an add on to the title of resilience, but I was having some difficulty with that. And I think as I hit record, I finally realized why I'm having difficulty coming up with an add on for the title. Because resilience in itself is already a valuable and a big enough word. It doesn't need add ons on the word. We don't need to add more to a word that already means so much, you know? So, resilience is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. I didn't want to put too much of the definition out there, because a lot of times the human mind will do this. The human brain does this, I should say. The brain, not the mind. The brain does this. It will conjure up intellectualized descriptions of something in an effort subconsciously to make something seem complicated to you, so that you don't attempt to solve it, or that it seems unreachable for you. So people who don't get that, they take the definition for what it is, with its intellectualized jargon, which is, words, and they cannot, or they don't feel like resilience, for instance, would be something that they could have. So I made the definition very simple for this reason. It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Difficulties of what? Difficulties in life. Okay? We often walk this life thinking that we would love to have a stress-free, carefree life. But life like that, a life that is set up that way, would not lend itself to you having any kind of strength, any kind of resilience whatsoever. And if a moment ever arose, maybe not for you, but for someone else, where that strength would be necessary, you won't have it and you won't know what to do. And being in a situation not knowing what to do can overwhelm you mentally. And that's when you just give up because you don't know what to do. You feel lost. You feel like you can't handle the situation. And so you give up quickly. You take for granted what's in that scenario that you maybe were given or blessed with. And because you're overwhelmed, you simply just bounce from the situation. That's another issue that happens when resilience isn't there. So resilience is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. Now, quickly in terms of time doesn't necessarily mean the same for every single person. That's another thing that sometimes people need to understand. Time, when it comes to mental health matters, when it comes to spiritual development matters, time is irrelevant. Time is out of the equation. Why? Because what might take me a month can take another person 3 months, can take another person a week. Time is irrelevant. We can't use time in one circumstance with one individual and say it's going to be the same for you. For instance, individuals that train in the gym and do a particular workout routine for bodybuilding purposes, they have at some point, once they start to build their body, their rapport for that sport to a certain level, they do have a coach, and the coach works with them specifically. The coach is not applying techniques on that person that the coach applies with other person exactly the same. They model, or I should say, they mold the approach based on the athlete and their performance, where they're at, you know? So time quickly is irrelevant. What's quick to one person may be slow for another. So recovering quickly from difficulties has to do with, well, how much of your life are you going to waste, or are you going to just lose hanging on to something that has dragged you down? That's what you got to analyze. Like, how much of your life are you just letting go of? Because instead of bouncing back from that, you are allowing yourself to stay down there. And that's another thing that people don't realize. In moments where life has its difficulties and it knocks you down, which it does, it knocks you down and makes you feel sometimes worthless. And a lot of times it makes you feel incapable. And a lot of times it makes you feel almost like, well, what's the point? Like, why am I even in this? Or like, how am I going to solve this? I can't even solve, the little that I have, or resolve the little scenario that I have. How am I going to solve something that's even more serious? I'm not going to be able to handle that. That sensation of like, what's to come cannot be handled by me makes an individual feel hopeless sometimes. And this is why you have to take life as a day by day event. You can't take life as, what's it going to be in 5 years? What's it going to be like in 10 years? That's not for everybody. Some people can do that, and some people can't. And I think that we live in a culture that constantly tries to use fear to manipulate how we move in our life, but also fear to kind of tell you that if you don't have a certain thing achieved by a certain time in your life, or a certain setup set up a specific way, then like that's it. Like your old age is horrible, or this will happen, or that will happen in a negative way. And then you're left feeling very nervous and very anxious. Like, it builds your anxiety. And anxiety is an enemy to resilience. Anxiety doesn't allow you to believe or have faith in what you don't see. And anxiety starts to make you feel like that's it. Like, I don't know what to do. I want an outcome now. I want to see something now, and the now is not going to happen. So resilience requires a couple of things, okay? but they're very simple. Resilience requires an individual to be flexible and or pliable. What does that mean? When we think of flexibility, a lot of times we think of like when you go to stretch or when you're dancing or dancers and what they do with their body. Pliability, people think of wood, how pliable it is, meaning, how much it can bend before it breaks. It should have some bend to it sometimes so that it doesn't break when you use it in construction. That's another thing that sometimes is overlooked. So in some situations, even construction, which is a solid structure, let's talk about constructions made with wood, or constructions made where wood is part of the equation. I used to work as a TV reporter for a show in my country back in Portugal, and I interviewed a man who used to make these beautiful designs in wood, and he discussed with me the value and the importance of the pliability of the wood. That when you build a structure of wood, regardless of what type you're using, the wood has to have some form of pliability so that if it's, has a certain amount of weight on it on one end, it's going to bend slightly, not to the point you don't notice it, but it has a slight bend to it so that the structure of wood entirely doesn't break, So in solid structures made of wood, and wood grows in nature, okay? There has to be some flexibility in order for the structure to be as strong as it is. So think about it. Inanimate objects that are constructed by man with materials that have to be strong enough to stand the test of time, they have to have flexibility in order to be strong. So resilience falls right into this same situation. Resilience ends up being how fast you recover, but it relies on your ability to be flexible and pliable. What does that mean? Maybe you're going to have to change what your expectation was. Maybe you're going to have to change what your approach was, Maybe you're going to have to change even like your perspective on your own life. Like, I used to own a business years ago, and it did really well. It was a photography business. But here was the problem with that. I didn't find myself satisfied, even though I was making easy money just taking pictures, printing pictures, and giving them to people at events, or getting paid ahead of time to do, event photography. It was easy money, but I wasn't happy. Why? Because the whole owning business aspect, there were things behind the scenes that people don't know about business ownership that were just not for me. For a long time, I pursued the dream and the idea of having my own business, yes. And even though I do life coaching, I don't necessarily see it as a business because I'm not consistently advertising for it. I really have worked by word of mouth. Now I'm kind of starting to put it more out there because I decided to launch this podcast, but I never really advertised for it because there's a lot of backstage work that happens when you're a business owner, and it may not be for everybody. Some people find contentment and joy in life by having a 9 to 5 and being able to come home and be fully present for their family, for their home life, for the people that are valuable to them. They don't want to be fully present for a business that is 24/7 a part of their life. It's not them. And then we also, when we think of that, we also start to look into, gender roles and how that works with that too, because like for me, um the option of doing something else in my life was there, but I was also at a turning point in life at the same time in my 20s, late 20s, where it was like, well, I want to be a present partner in my family. I want to be a present mother for my kids. Chasing or going up a career ladder is not it for me. And at the time, I felt kind of like loserish about it. But then when I got the opportunity to actually have my own business and I was making the money and I was going through all the steps of what that took and going and doing all the things that having a business takes, I realized that I don't want my own business either. I like the feeling of knowing when I'm working, when I'm not, so that I can be available for the other things in life that bring me joy, the other things in life that life has called me to do, the other things in life that required my attention. And for some people, it's like that. I don't think that resilience comes if everything in life is easy for you. even if you live a life with a family that's extremely loving and you've never had difficult moments with them, there are other things that have been difficult in that equation, if you notice, in that dynamic, that have helped to build resilience in that person as well. Um, so it's not so much about, oh, if you don't pursue this, then you're not strong enough or you're not chasing your dreams hard enough. I don't think that's the case. I think sometimes individuals don't pursue something because in their soul, they just know that that's not for them. You know, in their soul, they just don't feel happy pursuing that. They don't feel satisfied even with that as an option for themselves, and that's okay. And why do I say this in relationship to resilience? Because sometimes resilience allows you to be strong enough to look at something that you thought you envisioned for yourself and to actually say to that, that's not what I want. Like, that doesn't make me happy. That doesn't fulfill me. Why? Because happiness is a choice. I'm going to be happy regardless. I don't necessarily need to have that stature in life for me to feel like life is finally happy. And it doesn't mean that you're losing in life, because what's for you is for you. What's for you is for you. There's no circumstance or situation that can take away what is for you. And you can still make choices to, alter what's happening, but inevitably what's meant for you is still going to find you. And life will give you confirmations of that if you just allow yourself to go through the situations without always, knocking yourself down and thinking that that's it, that you can't overcome this. You can overcome every scenario in your life. And even what you think has your life as a mess, it's not really a mess. The mess sometimes is existing so that your resilience can be built. Why? Because that resilience is going to be needed for someone else. And that someone else could be somebody you love. It could be one of your kids, and they might need that. They might need a word from you, and you're going to have enough in the bank of wisdom, of resilience, to be able to give them a word that saves them. You know, so flexibility and pliability is necessary for resilience. So there's some factors here that become affected, or that resilience has a positive effect on, I should say. So resilience has super positive effects. Once you have achieved a certain level of resilience in your life, it is very difficult for you to stay in a what some people call I'm down, or I'm sad, or I feel like I'm in the gutter. It's very hard for you to have days like that, because resilience is almost equivalent to what, like even in some religions, they may call it salvation in a way. I wrote my first novel called Seeking Salvation, um, and it was based on a group of people seeking, physical health. Okay, it was based on 4 doctors that went to on a mission to a country in Africa. So there's 4 factors that resilience affects positively. That is your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health. Resilience affects these in a positive way. But you cannot build resilience unless you have hardships. Why do we need hardships? Because hardships allow for you to actually see what you have not been able to see before. Hardship actually allows for you to actually have faith, or to start building that faith that you can overcome this. Because every single hardship that exists in everyone's life is temporary. Everything is temporary. Hardships especially. They are temporary. They are not constantly existing and never disappearing. They're temporary. And once we start to observe things as temporary, we start to kind of relax our feeling of being stressed out about it. These are mental tricks. If you start thinking of things a specific way, eventually your brain starts believing it is, because your brain can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. Did you know that? Whatever thoughts are in your brain about what really exists or what you imagine to be, your brain thinks is the reality. And that's great, because you can use that to your benefit. But in order to use that to your benefit, you have to start practicing those thoughts. You have to start inputting those thoughts yourself. It's not like your mind is going to just have that on default. You have to make that your default. And so you start making that your default by telling yourself, even if you have to mentally repeat it to yourself, everything is temporary. You know, everything is temporary. This is not how things are going to stay. And you have to believe in that. Why? Because you're going to also foster the belief. The next mental thing you're going to tell yourself is, I can overcome this. I can overcome this. I don't care what has happened in the past. It doesn't matter what the past has brought to you. Maybe the past is an indication of what you already overcame. And if you overcame that, you can definitely overcome this. Okay? Now, for me, I definitely have linked to a source that kind of helps me keep that constant, and that's my, my spiritual relationship with God. But for you, it could be, whatever spiritually speaks to you. Notice the history of your life. Write down whatever moments in your life were the hardest that you overcame. Just write down, even if it was 2 moments or 3 moments or one life event, write them down. You know why? Because sometimes you need to remind yourself of what you have already been through and survived, so that you could look at this scenario, situation, or circumstance and know that you can overcome that as well, and that it's temporary because the other things were temporary. Because you can't overcome something that's still happening. You overcame it because it's already gone. So it's temporary, you know? What I'm telling you right now may seem trivial or may even seem, kind of like childish, but these are exercises that when you put them into physical action, again, your brain starts to then register this data. And it gets to the point that your brain registers it so much that you start to believe that those are truths, and they are true. That's the other thing. People have a difficulty sometimes believing the truth of their ability of overcoming hardships, because they always see a hardship that happened in the past as something that almost destroyed them or almost like broke their heart, or they lost total hope, or they just want to give up. They never want to do this again, or they never want to marry again. That's one that I heard a lot from people I've coached, like, I never want to get married again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so that's the same thing as going to a restaurant that made, your food and it wasn't that great and you ate and you leave the restaurant and you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to eat again. Like, I'm never going to have food again because that was a horrible experience. No, that was a situation, a circumstance unique to that restaurant. It doesn't mean that you now going to stop eating for the rest of your life. Like, find a different restaurant, So we need to put these things into these perspectives to help us understand that sometimes our way of analyzing things is ridiculous. And I'm sorry that I get kind of choked up when I talk. I know that I do. Because I'm still overcoming a scenario that happened to me like years ago. I used to be able to talk perfectly and not stutter as much. And then when I had a car accident, which if you go on my podcast channel, you'll find the testimonial where I share with you what happened on that accident and how I was like, saved from that car crash. I was resuscitated, but it did leave me with like a stuttering that I just repeat certain words in the middle of a speech or while I'm talking, as if I'm like a slightly broken record. So I apologize for that, but I like that about myself, so I don't edit it out. So emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual health is positively affected by resilience. But in order to have resilience, we need to endure hardships. You know why? Because hardships are development and revelation moments. A hardship that you go through in your life is a development and revelation moment. There's many stories in the Bible that talk about different individuals that went through extreme, utter hardships. I mean, one that stands out and is so common for so many people is, what Joseph and his brothers did to him. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit out of jealousy and hatred towards him because the father loved Joseph the most. They threw him in a pit. They went back to the tribe. They told the dad that the boy was, murdered by a pack of wolves. Um, but before they made it home, there was a slave trader coming through, a caravan coming through where they were at, and they decided to sell their brother. So not only did they throw the brother in a pit and humiliated and insulted him, and he experienced all of that, then when they realized they could make a quick buck off of their own brother, they sold his own brother to an Egyptian commerce slash slave trader. This is in the Bible, yo. Um, so now he was sold for money. They still went back and told the father the brother is dead. Our brother Joseph is dead. He was killed by a pack of wolves. That's it. The father was devastated. The father was devastated. He would have been devastated if it was any of his sons. It was his child. But the brothers, their hatred and their jealousy led them to do that. They lived with extreme guilt afterwards. And there's more to the story, but just, that hardship that Joseph went through created a, a moment of development that he then endured afterwards, and revelation, where then he turned into, after a few years doing, he was a servant in a I believe it was somebody who worked for the Pharaoh. He was a servant in his house, so he was part of the noble court. And Joseph was the servant of this nobleman's house. And a lot of scenarios took place. Cut to, he ended up being the right hand of the Pharaoh. So he went from being a simple Jewish boy with no title, right, to the right hand of the Pharaoh in charge of basically the economy and the crops, and dictating, who got what when Egypt and all the lands around it hit, a 7-year famine. Things were not growing. And Joseph's family, his brothers, had to come to Egypt and beg for help. And the person they came to was Joseph, and they didn't even recognize him. His own family, his own brothers, not his father, but his own brothers didn't recognize him. So development and revelation can do so much in a person's life. It can physically change them. Not because they age. When I say physically change them, I mean it can physically change them where they look like a completely different person. It's almost like life rejuvenates them. And I know that these hardships just break your heart. They're very difficult in real time to be living them. I understand it. I get it. I also know that the hardship that maybe you might be going through as you're listening to this makes you feel like it's unbearable. I don't want to have to experience this another day or one more time. But I don't know what to do. You have to start looking at life in a day by day pocket of time. Because resilience is kind of like taking your body to the gym to work out, to get in shape. You can't keep focusing on the target being the 6-pack, because it's going to make you want to give up. Because every day you go, you're not going to flex in the mirror and immediately see your 6-pack. Take it day by day. What does that mean? What can you do today to make the scenario slightly better? Whatever that is. Whatever that is. I remember when I was going through an extreme financial hardship with my daughter, and I was really worried about how I could afford everything I'm in charge of, because it's just me, plus continue to buy food for us. And this was years ago. And I started taking a day by day approach to life. And if I had money today to, get us a treat, and a treat for us would be like, maybe I would get a sub sandwich from her favorite sandwich place. Sometimes she likes it from Publix. Sometimes she likes it from she liked it from Subway at the time, or Jimmy John's. I would go and get it. Now, tomorrow, would I have a hardship because I used that money? Some of the days I did. Some of the days it would be the next day I would need that money, and something would, and but I thought of today. Today I want to have this special moment, so I'm just going to focus on today. When the next day came, something happened where I always ended up being saved in terms of my financials. It's almost as if um the oil just kept running out of, you know, the jar. It never ran out. And I had those moments repeatedly, you know. I had an insight of this when I was a little girl. One of the last teeth that I lost, and I believed in the tooth fairy when I was little, and then I grew up to know better, of course. But when I was little, I had my last tooth that fell, and I put it under my pillow. And I decided to test this, and I left it under my pillow all night. I woke up, and there was money under my pillow. It was like $5, I believe. Um, I decided to leave it under my pillow, like I didn't take it out. I want to see what would happen. Throughout the entire day, as I kept returning to my room, like maybe every 2 or 3 hours, there was more money under there each time. Now, I was in the house with my grandparents, but I didn't hear people going up and down the stairs. You know, especially my grandma and my grandpa, they weren't going to do that. And I would hear them because my playroom was right next to the stairs. So I didn't hear it. Well, that for me, that event for me, whether that money existed or not, at this point didn't matter. It created a memory of I believed that I would get more, and more showed up, you know? And it did, because I ended up using that money to buy a lot of candy at the store when I went out with my grandma. She would take me to the park, and then I was able to buy candy and sometimes ice cream when the ice cream truck came by. And let's just say I had a lot of money. I didn't have to ask anyone for money for that. So that event really happened. I don't know where it came from, but I could tell you that as I went through life, I realized it had already given me a snapshot of believe that you're going to be okay. Everything's temporary. Even money, people that are very wealthy, people that are in power, it's temporary. Just because you're blessed with it today doesn't mean you're going to have it tomorrow. And just because you have a hardship today doesn't mean it's going to stay like that tomorrow either. Everything is temporary. It's how you handle it that makes it change. It's how you deal with it that makes it um change into something better or change into something worse. You know, usually people that don't appreciate what they have, they take it for granted. They lose what they're taking for granted so they can understand how to appreciate that in life. So in a hardship moment, you might be like thinking, well, I don't take anything for granted. This is a hardship that I wish could be different. I wish I did have a way to make it better, but I don't. So how can I not be appreciating? I don't have anything to appreciate. That's how you feel sometimes, right? Well, assess the situation. Sometimes you got to look at your life where you notice components that maybe you never noticed before. Maybe there's people in your life. Maybe there's someone in your life that you just haven't necessarily been appreciating. And maybe the difficulty and the hardship you're having, a bit of it stems from that. That if you were to fix that situation, maybe the hardship would feel a little bit less heavy for you. You know? Sometimes fixing our external relationships with people that are close to us immediately alleviates the weight of our hardship. Because being able to have people to talk to, or just to acknowledge what's going on and share it with others, not in the please help me kind of mode, but in the I just need someone, I just need to vent. I need to be able to express this to my circle because I feel lonely dealing with this by myself. You'd be surprised how sometimes in doing that you open the doors for others in your circle to also share moments of their life where they experienced hardships and how they overcame them. You know, I have found that also. So development and revelation can only happen through hardship. Just like I was saying, much like going to the gym, when you go to the gym and you work out, you can't go with the idea that after a week you're going to have your body in shape. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. I always tell myself that when I go to the gym sometimes, and my body just my body just can't withstand another circuit of the exercise, because I believe in going for like If you go to work out, go for 40 minutes. Anything that's more than that, you're gonna exhaust your body. It's too much stress for your body, and your body actually holds on to fat. It doesn't allow it to actually burn, right? Because it's cortisol. It's a hormone that then takes over when you feel stress. And I'm going to get into that in a second after I give you this example. So, 40-minute exercise, resistance, not so much cardio, to tone the body. That's what I do. But there are days where I can't do a circuit of like four, 4 repetitions of what I've set up as a workout. Sometimes I can only do 2 or 3, and then that's it. I want to be done because that's just my body's telling me we're tired. We need to rest. Because I do more than just that. I also work. I have other things on the day that I'm responsible for. So exercise is not my only priority. It's a part of my lifestyle, but it's not what I give up my life for. And some people do, and they just live in the gym, and that's okay. God bless you. I can't be one of those people. So I tell myself Rome wasn't built in a day, so that I understand that, what, I'm not doing this to be an immediate result kind of situation. I'm doing this because it's the way that I live now. It's the way that my life is. So it's okay if I can't do the 40 minutes today, or in the 40 minutes I couldn't do the 4 repetitions of the circuit. I did 3, and we're gonna stop here. And tomorrow we'll do it again, or we'll do something different, but we'll come back tomorrow. So in reminding myself of that, I alleviate the weight of feeling like this gym thing is just so hard. What I mentioned about stress, one of the reasons why resilience is difficult for people to foster in their life or to actually grow in their life is because they have a negative mindset when it comes to stress. And that's because of society. Culture has given us this definition of stress as like the worst thing that you can have. Stress does this to your body. Stress is bad for your health. Stress is caused by all these negative things. So they only attach negativity to the word stress. Your brain believes that stress is really bad. It's negative. Stress, and I had to write this down so I wouldn't lose my train of thought. Stress can be a sign of a blessing. And I'm writing about this in my next book on emotional intelligence. Here's some synonyms for stress, right? Pressure, strain, tension, worry, anxiety, concern, and weight. Weight, right? When you go to the gym, when you exercise, sometimes you use weights and pressure and tension to build strength in your physical body. Here's some antonyms of stress. So the opposite of stress is insignificance, comfort, ignorance, indifference, relaxation, unimportance. So if you live a life that is stress-free, you are basically telling yourself you want to live a life that is insignificant. You want to live a life that's just comfortable. You want to live a life that is ignorant. You want to live a life that is indifferent. You want to live a life that is relaxed. And you want to live a life that is unimportant, that you're unimportant. That doesn't mean socially. That could be unimportant in terms of the people in your life. You're unimportant to those people. I don't think anybody would agree that that's the life they want to live. But when you look at what stress represents, pressure, strain, tension, worry, anxiety, concern, and weight, you're like, oh, but I don't want that either. So people find themselves in the middle then, usually when I coach, they're like, well, I'm in the middle of that, in between, I don't know what I would pick, but I definitely don't want to live a life that's insignificant. Here's the reason why people can't seem to choose and don't make a new definition of stress for themselves. Because they take on concepts that were given to them because it's easier. It's easier. Have you ever wondered why you have the definitions you have? Because they were given to you. It's easier for you to accept them than to try to re-signify them. Give them a new definition. What does that mean? Stress is an indication of growth. Why? Because pressure's on my life. There's weight on my life. Just like muscles require pressure with weights in order to grow, life requires that as well. So this is nothing but a training camp for me to be able to build resilience. Stress is not an indication that you're failing. Stress is an indication that you're very important. Stress is an indication that you're not staying in the comfort zone. Stress is an indication that you're not indifferent. You don't just lay back and relax and don't care about anything. Stress is an indication that you're not insignificant, that what you're doing is not insignificant. You know, stress is good. Stress is positive. Stress allows you to build the resilience you need in order to have the mindset to pick happiness every day, the mindset to see life through a lens of peace, that another person doesn't have the power anymore to engage you in argument or in disagreement, regardless of age, because you're resilient. Resilience has nothing to do with wisdom. That's another thing that people sometimes get confused. They think the wiser you are, the more resilient you are. Not necessarily. Wisdom is a great thing to have, yes, but wisdom and resilience are two different things. Wisdom is an accumulation of information based off of experiences you've had that have now given you answers to some problems and questions that other people have yet to encounter, but now you know about it, so you have wisdom. Resilience is being able to cope with hardships and bounce back as if those hardships never happened to you. You actually bounce back better. You bounce back stronger. You bounce back like Rocky Balboa, in the movie Rocky. You bounce back and you fight like you've never fought before. Because it's not about how many times you're knocked down. It's about how many times you get up and you keep trying. That's what it is. And resilience is the mindset, or it's part of your mindset, because we have wisdom, we have resilience. We have these different components that all become our mindset. We're trying to make our mindset better. We're trying to create a mindset that allows us to see stress as a positive, because stress is building muscle. What muscle am I building? The muscle of resilience in my mind. Why do I want to build that muscle? So I can go through these experiences in life that are going to keep happening. But I need these experiences to get wisdom. So all of these things are interconnected. You cannot get wisdom if you're not also, parallelly, or I shouldn't say parallelly, that sounds weird. If you're not simultaneously also becoming resilient. They do kind of coexist and they grow with each other. Yes, they do. But they're not the same thing, is what I said earlier. So I want you to think about hardships you've had. I want you to write them down. I want you to write down how you overcame them. And in doing so, I want you to keep them as a record of proof to yourself that whatever you have today can be overcome, because everything is temporary. Every single thing in our life, the day and night is temporary. The weekend is temporary. Every single weekday is temporary. It doesn't last forever. Your work hours are temporary. And when I say temporary, I don't mean it's only 5 minutes of time. I mean, time is irrelevant. That's another thing. Another component that helps people really build their resilience is to finally give up their boxed definition of time connected to everything. Time is irrelevant. Time has nothing to do with resilience or even wisdom, because wisdom is about experiences that you go through that give you information, during the outcomes of those experiences. So some experiences could be a day, some could be a month, some could be a week, some could be a year. So wisdom can come from experiences that have different points of time. So time is irrelevant. And when we start to understand that, then our view of hardships mentally changes. Are you still going to have some level of anxiety? Yes, you are. You're never going to be able to get rid of it. A life that doesn't have those feelings is a life that basically is going nowhere. There's always a level of doubt. There's always a level of fear. That's not a bad thing. Don't allow culture and society to make you believe that because those exist, that it's a horrible thing and you should be treated. Those are good things. Now, if they take over you mentally and you can't physically function in your life, that's a problem. You need to definitely seek professional help, medical assistance, yes. But what I'm trying to tell you here with everything I'm sharing is that we have the natural capability to actually grow this in our life, to actually make this a priority. How so? You have to do mental inputs every day. It's little tiny moments of meditation where you are telling yourself this in your mind. It is very important. Or even speaking it to yourself, you know? I am powerful. I can overcome this. I can do this. I overcame this before. Also, by reminding yourself, I am not alone. You are not alone. That's another thing people I need some water. That's another thing people sometimes forget. They sometimes forget that they're not alone, you know? Um, and yes, that goes to your spiritual health. Your spiritual health is interconnected with your mental health, with your physical health and your emotional health. They're all interconnected. You can't disconnect one and just work on one of them and expect the others to be okay. They're interconnected. So by being interconnected, they need to be worked on together. Now, is this an easy task? Yes, it is actually. Culture makes it seem like it's difficult, but it's an easy task. Why? It only takes you willing to make it a priority. If you make it a priority, and simply just by like watching this video is already you making it a priority. You know, be selective on your feed. What's on your feed in the social media that you look at? What do you research on the computer? You know, what kind of books surround you? That's another thing. You know, a lot of my clients, I start to, when I do sessions with them, I sometimes have specific books that I am intuitively led to get to them, to get for them. You know, I use a lot of my intuition to assist people. Um, and I've never been disappointed simply because when you use your intuition, you are always coming from a place of love. Hence why I call it, Love Tribe. So, what does this have to do with resilience? Because for me to speak of this and to have some of these tips that I've shared with you in this video, I have been through some of life's extreme difficult hardships already. And I understand how low life can make you go and how low life can get you, that you almost lose it all. I understand that. And even after you lose it all, you can still regain it. It's not completely lost, you know? But some individuals have a journey that just needs that to happen. And as much as we sometimes want to be kind and we want to help everybody, sometimes the greatest form of help you can give is simply by being compassionate enough to understand that not everybody's at the level that you're at. Not everybody is there. Your hardship is not the same as somebody else's hardship. Don't think because somebody is financially well off that they're not experiencing the same emotional status you are simply because you have less than they do. I have met individuals that make extreme amounts of money and still live paycheck to paycheck. They don't know how to navigate and how to be disciplined with what they make. And that affects their mental state because they have the ability to do a lot, but they don't know what to do with the lot that they make. And that bothers them. So it starts to chip away at their mental health, and it chips away also at their emotional health because then they feel like they won't know how to manage a relationship, for instance. And so those two things are affected. Guess what? The next thing you know, they're physically unable to actually dedicate time to take care of their body. And then because of that, spiritually, they don't have a connection. They don't have a spiritual connection with anything. And then they're in a chaotic state of mind, even though they are super wealthy. Same thing can happen to a person that's not super wealthy. So one great thing about mental health, emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health, it doesn't matter about your status in life and your financial standing. If you notice, none of these factors I mentioned have anything to do with your money. They have to do with your internal state. You have to work on your internal state. You have to take ownership of that. Just like you get, I don't have my phone here now. But let's say like this pen, just like I take this pen and I choose to open it, do this to it. I could have chosen to put this down, whatever, and then I choose to use it to go in my book and write notes. You need to do that with your mind. Same way as when you go on your phone and you input a password to access your device, to access your apps, what apps you download to your phone, all of the actions you do with inanimate objects, you need to apply them with your mind. It's time that we start taking time to apply to our mind what we apply to everything else around us that we try to control, everything else around us that we try to work for our benefit. It's time that you start to put that and actually activate that with your mind. Do that with your mind, your mindset. You want to harness resilience, you're going to have to sometimes bite down on your lip and endure the hardship. The hardship is not going to go away. You can ignore it, but it's not going to go away. You don't want it to happen. Sometimes you want to walk away. Okay. Just know that down the line, you're going to experience that same hardship again. Until you're able to overcome it, life will keep presenting it to you until you actually can face that hardship in the face and say, it does not control me. It does not have the power to knock me down, and I'm going to overcome this. Once you are able to verbalize that belief with yourself, the entire situation starts to slowly get better. But again, time is irrelevant. So it doesn't mean overnight you go from, darkness to like all of a sudden it's sunshine. It may be a slow sunrise, but the sunrise starts. You have to give the opportunity for that to happen. The only way to give that opportunity is to actually put in the work. So the work that you would put in the gym for the body, the work that you would put in the like let's say your spiritual development, the work you put in for that, the work you put in to develop your emotional stability, and the work that you put in for your mental state. All of this is important because you work on one, you're going to start strengthening the other. Because they're interconnected, it's not that you have to work at four things at the same time to build resilience. You start working with one. Is it the emotional part? Is it the mental part? Is it the physical part? Or is it the spiritual part? Start with one of them. How do I start? What do I do? That could be a question, right? Well, for me, my spiritual health, I started developing it, or I started working with it by simply meditating and praying more, seeking out events or activities of worship. I started doing that. And eventually, as I started doing that, my emotional health got way better. It wasn't overnight, but I would definitely say within that same month of time that I started developing myself spiritually, and this was 7 years ago, my emotional state was like altered for the better. And then eventually, because of that, I finally found myself with enough love to then want to devote time to better my physical state. So then I started exercising, first with the goal of, getting in shape, but then I did it so often for such a long time, it really became a part of my life. Like, it's something I do because I enjoy it now, at least 3 to 4 times a week, and I keep it to that, and I'm happy. It makes me happy, actually. I look forward to it. Once that was there, my mental health got better. I realized that the same stressful events that kind of repeated in different ways, they didn't knock me down as much. And I was actually kind of feeling surprised. How is this not getting me depressed? Or how is this not getting me upset? And it's because resilience was built, you know? So resilience is a very funny thing because not only does it take a lot of different hardships to happen for you to finally have it, but then when hardships continue to exist in life because they don't disappear, you're not going to feel yourself going down anymore. It doesn't, life doesn't knock you down anymore. So that's why I say everything is temporary. Because even in the hardship that you're enduring, you're allowing the opportunity for resilience to be built. And you're going to need it down the line. Why? Because you're going to keep having experiences that are going to be stressful. But when you have resilience, it doesn't knock you down the same way. It's like when you go to bench press a particular weight that you've been doing for a while to get stronger, but now you don't need anyone to spot you or anyone to, you don't even need to like breathe as hard as you were before to move that weight. And you're like, I thought I was going to need more, like I was not going to do, I couldn't do these 10 in a rep. I thought I wasn't able to do 10 repetitions. Like I was only able to do like 7, up to 7 before. And I did 10, like much easier. That's what resilience does to you. But you have to allow the opportunity. And you also have to maintain yourself flexible emotionally, flexible with your expectations. That's another reason why people don't want to endure hardships, because they get disappointed when their expectations, are let down. You got to be flexible with your expectations. Sometimes cancel them out. It's okay to have them, but at the same time that it's okay to write in this paper, I can also cross it out. That's what expectations are. It's okay to write them down. Write down what you expect so that you can see it on paper. But then cross them out. Cross out the ones that to you just sound like it's too much. If in a scenario you have like 4 to 5 expectations, let's say, maybe you need to cross out 3 of them and only keep 2. Because maybe only 2 are logically, expectations that can actually happen. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't aim high or aim for better. That's not what I'm saying. We're talking about different things. If we're going to talk about relationships and people and who you should connect with, that's different. I'm talking about resilience. And resilience is a component that you need to have in your mental health so that as you continue existing, hardships don't knock you down emotionally and physically where you can't handle life. Because you got to handle life for yourself. You got to be self-reliant. That's the greatest capability a human being can have, being self-reliant. It's really, really valuable. So knowing that you can be self-reliant, self-sufficient, that's what builds your confidence, which is something I'm going to talk about in the next video. I'm going to talk about confidence, how to build your confidence. What can you do to become a more confident person, even in the midst of feeling like you don't have reasons to be confident. So I'm going to point some of those out for you. But right now, I just wanted to go over resilience. So the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, we have to start disconnecting that from time. Quickly for one person can be different from another. So time is irrelevant in these matters of mental health. We got to look at what is becoming better, not so much as to how fast or how quickly it's done in terms of what's fast for me. Like, it's not a situation that you are timing, is what I'm trying to say. Why are you doing that? Because the more you look at time, the longer it's going to seem that it's taking. You got to disconnect time from it and take quickly as just the fact that you're able to bounce back. When did it happen? If it happened a month later or 2 months after you had a difficult time in the past, okay, that was your quickly then. Okay? Maybe now it's going to be slightly different. And if it's the same amount of time, that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not bouncing back. The importance is that you can bounce back from a hardship, which you can. I'm pretty sure everyone watching has had a difficult moment already happen to them and they bounced back from that. You are going to be able to bounce back even faster as time in life goes on for you. And that is going to be an indication of your resilience. How do you get this resilience? Hardships have to happen. Broken hearts have to happen. Disappointments have to happen. I know that we don't want these, but the lack of these in our life only mean that we live an insignificant, ignorant, unimportant life. And nobody wants to live a life like that. So the next time you're looking at your life and you're disappointed about outcomes, and you're also disappointed and brokenhearted about, the difficult moment that's happening, just remember that there is a plus side to it. You are building your resilience. You are building something that is going to stand the test of time as you continue existing. And resilience is what makes a person a superhero. So let's start changing the definitions of concepts that society has as a negative and start giving them positive definitions. Filter out the same way you filter on your phone, the same way you determine, who has access to what in your house or even on your phone, on your devices, on your tablet, on your computer. Same way with your mind. Filter out what has access to your mind. You control that. No one else does. So here's the exercise I want you to do now that you've watched this video, hopefully to the end. I want you to write down difficult moments you've had in your life. Write them down as bullet points or as sentences. I want you to read them to yourself. And then right next to it, so make like 2 columns, I want you to write down how those moments were overcome. Like what took place that helped you overcome that. Whether it was by yourself or someone else helped, whatever. Just write down what happened. In summary, read them to yourself. Write down the difficult moment you're having right now. Okay? On the other side, you don't have an answer yet because if you're in a difficult moment, you don't know, right? But read again how you overcame the other times. And you're going to write down right now that for this difficult moment, I believe I can overcome this no matter what. Because I am not alone. Just write that. I believe I can overcome this no matter what, because I am not alone. And you might ask, well, who is there with me? It could be your family. It could be somebody you love. And for many of you, it's just God. But you are not alone. You are not alone. And if every hardship on your paper you overcame before, whether by yourself or other people were involved in helping you, then that right there just proves my point. You weren't alone in those moments either. You weren't alone in those moments either. So don't allow the negative definition of stress, the negative concept of the word hardship to make you believe that this is what's going to knock you down permanently, because it's not. Why? Because you're resilient. Why is that? Because it is a factor of life. It is part of nature. Just like nature has cycles, our mental state has cycles. In order to acquire wisdom, resilience is being built along with it. And with resilience comes your emotional capability, your emotional stability, your emotional development. All of these things together boost you into wanting to better yourself physically, boost you into wanting to better yourself spiritually. They're interconnected. Just like everything in nature is interconnected, your consciousness is interconnected this way. That's why you can overcome this no matter what, because you are not alone. Okay? So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that this is helpful. I hope that in a week, for some, a month for others, you start to notice the positive results of the fact that events in our life are temporary, hardships are temporary, they're not forever. Things tend to shift for the better when we want them to shift for the better because it's what we're focusing on. Focus on better instead of focusing on the negative definition of what you've been, given. And I promise you, it does change. And it does change towards a more positive outcome for you. And sometimes the positive outcome is not a physical outcome. The positive outcome sometimes is the state of your mind. And that's what we're trying to better. We want to better the state of our mind, not necessarily the state of what's on our table. Because what's the point of having a table full of everything if the state of your mind is not able to notice what a blessing that is? So let's start working with that. I love you. Thank you so much for watching. You've been with me for an hour. I really appreciate you. You're a blessing, and I promise to bring you more content. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to donate to the movement, I would definitely appreciate it. I would love that. Just check the show more section. And I hope you guys have a great one. And please connect with me on Instagram if possible. I use that app a lot. You can find me at Lightworker143. I love to hear your feedback if you use this technique and if it helps you out. Let me know. I love you so much for watching. Peace out.